Welcome to the My Messy Grief podcast. I'm Cindy Schuffelbarger, a bereaved mom and the founder of P23 Retreat, where we create space for parents to grieve. In each episode, I'll chat with a guest to learn about outlets for our grief in everyday life. By processing grief in healthy ways, we can learn to find joy again while still honoring and remembering our beloved. I'm so glad you're here, and I invite you to be fully present and just rest as you listen. You might laugh, you might cry, you might be inspired. Whatever emerges, you have permission to be curious, to learn, and to explore. So let's get started with today's guest. Well, hello, everyone. I am excited to welcome our guest today, Mary Demuth. She is a literary agent. She's very prolific, really, and creative in lots of things. She's a daily podcaster with PrayEveryday.show. She is a scripture artist, an author of more than 50 books, a speaker, and her most recent work is The Freedom of Surrender. She lives in Texas with her husband, but she's really been a world traveler, or at least for different seasons of her life. And she is the mom to 3 adult children. So welcome, Mary.
It's great to be here. Thanks for the nice intro.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a little plug for your podcast. I absolutely love it. It's so encouraging, and I love a 5-minute podcast.
Yes,
of course, here we are about to do a 30-minute one, but
Yeah.
I love a good 5-minute podcast as well, and to be prayed for and to hear scripture. So, yeah, as I was checking out the site, like all of your things are right there. So I encourage our listeners to go check it out. So welcome. And I have read your memoir, but so I've heard a little bit of your story and followed you over the years. And I'm just curious if you just share a little bit about your experience with grief.
Oh, gosh.
We just jump right in. Jump right in here.
You know, there was a lot of grief from my childhood, and even this week I had grief from it. And so I guess, just to remind people that, you think, oh, well, I had that grief 4 years ago. Well, I should be over it by now. Some of my grief is decades old and I still am not over it. So for me, a lot of the grief involves, grieving, not being protected as a child and experiencing a lot of abuse in an unsafe home, drugs in the house, divorces aplenty, predatory father, death of a father when I was 10 years old. It was relentless and a lot of complex trauma. So I've had to deal with a lot of grief. Recently, my husband's father just died a couple of weeks ago. And so we've had that. And my mom has been undiagnosed, but is battling some sort of dementia. She's the last living parent of my husband and I, and it's been just hard. So there were years actually where I would be like, Paul, when he begged about the thorn to be taken away from him, just take it away. It's too heavy. And there were times where I felt like I will never get through this. Like I won't see the other side. I will always be sad forever. And I just want to encourage people that, yes, that's a very real feeling and it feels overwhelming and permeating, but it doesn't last forever. It does get better, but it's just a different kind of new normal that we never really can go back. Like there's never I wish it was like then, because that was then and we have a whole new now. And so I guess I'm just saying that I'm encouraged that the Lord has brought me on this long healing journey, but I'm still on it. And there are still times where I'm like, I was in church, my recent grief, this church this last Sunday, and I saw a mom reach over and put her hand, just cupped the back of her daughter's head. Her daughter's probably 7, 8 years old. And I just cried because I just never have experienced that from a mom. And so just to see it was very healing for me. Like I don't know. There was just something about it that was super healing for me to watch it because I didn't experience it. So I could kind of experience it secondhand, and it was really beautiful.
Well, thank you for your willingness to share that. I'm sorry for all of the hard things. It's beautiful, though, to see how God is walking alongside of you and using your story to help others heal. And so I hope that offers some
Mm.
encouragement. But you mentioned this concept of grief being a journey. It's not a once and done, we tuck it away, we move on, right? It's integrated into who we are. And so I've seen you use art and prayer and writing to really help express yourself. And I'm curious how some of these creative outlets have helped you process your grief.
I believe I have a book coming out in March about story. And
Mm,
one of the things that I made a point in that book is that the way that God heals us is the way that he has shaped us.
mm,
And so, for instance, I am a communicator. I cannot help but communicate through writing, through speaking. And so God has used that unique bent in me to heal me of so many things. And that's my joke, is the reason I've written 50 books is I'm a huge mess and I've
yeah,
got a lot of healing. So every book God uses to heal me.
for me.
I have always been, I hate to say the word artist, but I've always been a doodler. I've always been
Mm,
someone really involved in loving graphic design and things like that, and design in general. And that's been a discovery of the past few years of
mm,
processing my life and my grief through that form of creativity. And so one thing that you can ask the Lord is just like, Lord, how am I bent? How am I made? How am I
mm,
shaped? And oftentimes he will use your unique shape, as he did with me, to be a part of your healing journey.
mm.
And so, like if you're a photographer, perhaps just capturing images of barren trees is helping you. There's just a lot of different ways. And God is a very creative God, and he doesn't have the same path for everyone on your grief journey.
Interesting that you like that's speaking to me right
Mm,
now. And probably some of the reasons that I this whole podcast started, my messy grief, is I'm shaped to I'm drawn to color and
mhm,
creativity. And so, this idea of using all five senses to
mhm.
explore our grief, God shaped me like that. And
Yeah.
so, and then here we are talking about some of those things. So,
Mhm.
what other surprises of beauty or hope have you discovered in that creative process?
It's part of it, and this relates both to writing and art and speaking too. Like, I'm often wanting to bring a fresh metaphor to the
Mm,
page, or a fresh metaphor to the art page. Because if I'm illustrating scripture, there's very simple ways to illustrate our God as a rock. I can
right.
paint a rock.
God.
But there is a process that goes on of saying, but Lord, how are you a rock, and what could that look like in a painting, or how
Mm,
could I describe a firm foundation in a way that's creative and different? And that process then not only helps me grasp that metaphor, but then it gives other people another hook and handle to be like, oh yeah, yeah, I had that experience,
sure.
or I climbed a mountain and was on top of one, and I know what that feels like, or whatever it is that ends up being the metaphor.
I'm curious about your process. This might be a little off script,
Mm.
but so do you often have the thought or the idea and then you express it, or do you find that in your asking questions, or do you jump in and start creating and then it emerges?
In terms of writing, I'm typically doing a lot of exegetical work, like exegeting scripture. And honestly, the most important thing that I teach people is the simple act of observation. And
Mm,
so I've written books about women of the Bible, and I write their stories as fiction, but as close, it's like historical fiction, as close to the
sure.
narrative as possible. But I'm adding texture to that. But the first question I ask there is, how would I feel if I were that person? What
Hmm.
would it be like to be in their shoes or their sandals or their bare feet or whatever?
Yeah.
And placing myself there, and then observing the text and just simply saying, what does it say? And so many times that's the most elementary part of understanding scripture, but we have been so used to listening to sermons that have interpretation and application that we haven't learned how to simply observe the text.
Mm,
For instance, like with Bathsheba, we've often heard that she's like a temptress or whatever. And
right.
If you do a simple reading of the text, just a simple reading, you will see that that is not the case. And she was taken against her will, and she wasn't being immodest. Everybody bathed on their roof. So those kinds of things are really, really helpful. And then in terms of art, I think one of the spiritual practices I've been doing is I paint every day for Lent. And those scriptures usually I'll just go back through my journal in the year prior, and I will catalog or write down all those scriptures that I have put in my journal. And so I at least have had some, thinking about those scriptures before, but then every day I pick one and I ask God to show me something. And sometimes it is super rudimentary. There is a rock and there is a sunshine, and it's like super that, but sometimes it's something different, and it's not always wildly creative. Sometimes it's just rudimentary, but that's kind of how my process goes with both actions.
Love that. Thank you. I am also curious how your relationship with God has changed and do you see that differently in art versus prayer versus writing? As you've processed grief, how your relationship with him has changed?
Yes. At one time someone told me, this was probably about 12, 15 years ago. He said, I saw you as a victim before, but now I see you as a carrier of light. And I really loved that, that phraseology. That was beautiful. But that's been kind of that's the whole idea behind the word restory, which is on my website, and it's going to be that book in March. But it's this idea that we have been healed in order to be healers. We have been blessed in order to bless. We have been set free in order to be emancipators. There's a so what to our story. And so I think over the years, I have gone from that victim mentality, which is completely normal, particularly when you've had hard circumstances. Of course,
right?
There's going to be many times where you're that. And it's the truth, you were. So, but as you grow, I hope and I pray, and I have been seeing that other people see in me that my joy level is increasing every year I know Jesus. And so there's this infectious joy that has happened, which is something I saw recently in Malawi when I was there on a mission trip, just people with absolutely nothing and chock full of joy. It is possible to have poverty of anything, poverty of soul, poverty of circumstance, and yet still have joy.
Especially when it's rooted in him, right? And that hope that we have.
Right.
Beautiful. Yeah. So then what would you say to someone? Obviously, God has been your connection through these years, and you've participated in that, right? You've surrendered things to him and allowed him and invited him into that work. So what would you just say to somebody who's feeling disconnected to God right now in the midst of their pain?
That's why I wrote The Freedom of Surrender, because it is a journey that I've been on, and it's not a fun journey sometimes. Like the word surrender. I've had lots of podcasters be like, not really liking that word. It sounds like defeat. Like, I give up, I surrender. Here's my white flag. But it's actually a really beautiful spiritual practice, and I cannot change the circumstances or the pain of my father-in-law's death, for instance. But I can surrender the situation to him and say, Lord, would you do something good in me in the aftermath of this pain? I surrender even how I want to process it. I surrender the outcome I want to have. I surrender, my angst over an adult child that's hurting my heart. Just all these different kinds of griefs that we carry. Because that's learning that although we, of course, have agency and God gives us free will, which is so lovely, there is a spiritual practice of relinquishment, of saying, I have pulled my puppet strings. It has not worked. And I am ready to let God take that burden, because he promises that his yoke is light. And we will find rest for our souls if we give him those burdens that we're carrying. Somehow we think that the universe is up to us somehow. And we forget that every night that we go to sleep, God still runs it without us.
Right?
He didn't need
Oh
my
my
help.
goodness. What a great reminder just to recenter ourselves and bring us back to, gosh, like I can get myself so filled with anxiety, and yet
Mhm.
God is present and the world is still spinning, even though my world might feel out of control.
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you first started to learn this idea of surrendering the hard things to God, whether people like that word or not, I'm going to use it with you. When, like, surely you just didn't wake up at the age of 30 or 40 or whatever age and get it. Like, what can you share a little bit about that?
You're kind of the first person that's asked that question, so it's going to make
Oh,
me think
I'm
back a bit.
sorry.
No, no, I
Oh,
love it. And honestly, the what popped into my mind was odd, but it was in college. So I'd
oh,
only been a Christian. I met Jesus at 15, so I'd only been like a 3-year-old Christian by the
mm,
time I got to college. And college was where I spilled my story. And
mm,
that's where so much healing happened.
uh-huh.
I think that, again, that was God using my own gifting of communication to heal me because I spilled my story.
Sorry.
But I just remember there were some songs during that time, some worship songs that were about surrender. And I just kind of hooked on to those. And I had a lot of pain then, and I didn't know what to do with it. So that was kind of the way that I started. And so it's been
Mm,
a practice for a long time. Does that mean I don't take back control?
right.
I totally do. I'm a human being like everybody else, but
Yes,
I have been practicing this art of relinquishment for a very long time.
mm. So you've gotten good at
Maybe, yeah,
it.
or
Maybe.
maybe, yeah, I hope so. I mean, that's why I wrote the book, so I must know
Right.
something about it. But
That's great. Well, I can't wait to read the book. You said it's out this spring, right?
No, well, that this one's
Mm.
out now, The Freedom of Surrender. So
Okay.
yeah, that one came out in October, and this is a 40-day devotional
Oh, nice.
with the art, with 40 pieces of
Oh,
art in it.
beautiful.
So it teaches people how to surrender. The other one is called Restore Your Life, and that comes out in the spring.
Well, I can't wait to get it. Both of them. Um, so, if someone listening right now is in deep pain and curious about using art or prayer to process their grief, where would you encourage them to start in a practical way? We know that this part of giving it over to God is part of that, but like, what's one practical thing that's a starting point for someone?
I think a lot of us are artists. All of us are artists, and we kind of stop being artists in the second or third grade.
Mm,
And we have a lot of voices that say you can't do it. And I would just encourage people to pick it up just for fun and then dethrone the art teacher that's screaming at you on your shoulder, put her on a shelf
um,
somewhere and just try it. And one of the things they can do is go to my Instagram account at Mary
mm,
Demuth and scroll down a bit, and you'll see my live action quick paintings just to
ah,
see how I
I'll
do it.
do that.
And it might be helpful and inspirational of, okay, if she can do that, because it's pretty simple. I'm certainly not trained as an artist, so it might give them some encouragement. In terms of prayer, a little book I love is called The Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence.
Mm,
It's
mm,
super short. It's probably like 80 pages long. And that book has been hugely influential about me. And the premise of it is simply have conversations with the Lord throughout the day, while you're doing
mm,
dishes, while you're, taking a walk, while you're working, while you're going to bed at night. Like all those times you can have a continual conversation with the Lord and just give him those things. Because I think a lot of times what we do is we'll get to the end of our day or the end of our week or the end of our month, and we have so much, we've kept such long accounts with God, meaning we've got to stockpile all our surrenders. But it's better, like in the moment, to say, "Oh, I give this to you. This is
mm,
really stressing me out. I give it to you now."
mm.
And so having that practice is really helpful.
Yeah, what a great idea. All throughout the day. And
Yeah.
that reminds us of his presence too, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And this idea of being still, all of those things. Love
Hmm.
that. And I love too that you said that we all have an artist inside of us.
Hmm.
It was I don't know, many years ago, reading through the creation story. And I'm like, you know what? If we're created in God's image, He's a creator, right? We're creators as
Mhm.
well. And that can take many different forms. But it's just a reminder that there's something that happens in creating that helps me, anyway, process. And maybe sometimes it brings clarity. Sometimes I'm able to focus on something other than whatever pain I'm experiencing. So it's a healthy escape, if you will, that then leads to some sort of clarity and peace. And so, yeah, thanks for that reminder as well. Get back in touch with that artist inside,
Well, and anything healing comes when we get things out of us. And so
right?
anything that will get it out of you. So people who aren't writers, I will say, speak it into your phone. If you're,
Uh,
get it out of you, or,
mm,
obviously draw a picture or whatever, just get it out of you. Sing a worship song that reflects what you're going through right now. Just physically get it out of you, because that's where a lot of our sickness and pain and stress comes from, is by this crazy world, that this Western world that we live in, that says grief should last your 3 days of
it's a
bereavement
very
leave,
right.
and then you should be fine. Like,
Definitely.
oh, your dad died 4 years ago, that you should be fine. It's not. That's not true. And we don't leave any space for lament or grief. We do
Mm,
need to do it. And if we don't do it, we shove it down and then we explode. And so it's
mm.
better just to let it out in increments as it comes up.
So I'm curious, have you written a book on lament yet?
I speak on it a lot,
Okay.
and that idea is woven through 2 or 3 of my books. Yes.
Okay. Great. Yeah. We try to encourage people to do that. I have not mastered that, but I have seasons of revisiting it and
Yep.
yeah, try to make it not to be legalistic or formal about it,
Right.
but trying to go through those steps. So
We
yeah.
recently led a group. My husband and I have gone through some church hurt, but now we lead groups through it if they've been
Uh,
through church hurt.
you're-
And one of the exercises we do is we teach them about a lament structure in the Psalms,
mm,
which starts with complaint and ends with praise, but there's a
praise.
whole process. And then we have them share their laments of what they missed, what happened, all of that. And
Mm,
it was extremely healing. And so
mm,
if you can, even just do a little Google on how to write a lament, or
mhm.
what's the elements of lament psalm, and writing your own for your situation, it is deeply helpful. I've seen people revived after writing a lament.
Oh, wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, what does healing look like for you now today? Obviously, you are good at expressing and processing and doing all the things. But what does healing look like? Not as an endpoint, but as continuing the process.
For me, it looks like welcoming new community. And so
Oh,
having, had a church loss a couple years
mm,
ago, and my tendency after that was to just circle the wagons and be like, all Christians are terrible and I don't like them. So, and especially Christian leaders. And so
yes.
I'm just going to do this, no. But, I was talking to someone recently. They asked me how I was doing. And I said, I can't tell you how happy I am. And as I
Ah,
traced it back, it's the new relationships that the Lord has brought in my life.
mm,
And had I and there was moments of stiff arming, don't get
sure.
me wrong, but had I completely stiff armed, I would not be in the joyful position that I am now with new relationships. And those relationships are the healing elements that I have. And I often tell audiences a relational wound requires a relational cure. So if
Oh,
you're
wow.
wounded in bad relationship, you will be healed with good relationship. And so, but the problem is we tend to like build a wall because we get upset and we think all people are terrible, and that pushes out all relationship. But there are some good people out there in the world who are amazing, and they're going to be a part of your healing journey, and it's time to take a little bit of the bricks down to let somebody in.
Do you address that in the Wall Around Your Heart
I do.
book?
That's a big part of
Okay.
that book. Yeah.
Okay. Great. I have that on my bookshelf. I'm going to revisit.
Yeah, that's a hallmark book of that particular idea. Yes.
Love that. So, what other parting thoughts do you have, whether it's about creativity, lament? What what would you like to share with guests who are struggling with grief, whatever kind of grief, whether that's as a bereaved parent or they've lost a sibling or
Mm,
a job or
yeah.
church hurt, any of that? What parting words would you share?
I want to have a pastoral word of, you are normal. This is not abnormal to be
Normal.
sad. It is normal to
Mm.
be sad.
Mm.
And the measure of your relationships, this is actually a gift, because
Mhm.
who sticks with you, who carries that burden, you're going to be able to see those are the most important relationships of your life. Those who walk away or who are like, you're still grieving, whatever, you know the caliber of that relationship. It's a very good hallmark of who to hold on to and who to let go of.
Mm. Wow. And I know we struggle with letting go of, but sometimes that makes space for
Yeah,
something else that God has for us.
totally.
So beautiful. Well, thank you for being here today. I'm super excited to get the chance to speak with you, and I'm gonna go explore your art a little bit more and some of your books. I'm looking forward to the Restory
Awesome.
book that's coming out. So I just wish you blessings in your writing, in your endeavors, in your encouraging other people. I pray that you have those around you supporting you
Mm.
as you are faithful to how He's called you. So thank you for being here today. Thank you to our guest for listening in, and we will talk soon.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of My Messy Grief. Grief is a reminder of our love for someone. Grieving is hard work and is meant to be felt, not fixed. If you know a parent grieving the loss of a child, send them our way at p23retreat.org. Likewise, if you want to help to support our ministry, drop by our website to give the gift of hope to a grieving parent. May today be filled with moments of light, even in the darkness and messiness of grief.